What's going on, hackers? My name is NahamSec, and today we're going to be looking at TryHackMe's Advent of Cyber. This is an event that started on December 1st, and we're going to take a look at one or two of these levels. I think we're going to look at day 4 and day 5 and see what they're about. If you haven't seen already on Twitter, TryHackMe's hosting Advent of Cyber. This is where they do a bunch of events, a bunch of different rooms to teach you different aspects of hacking. I think some of the challenges they had was around cloud hacking, web hacking, and if I'm not mistaken, there is also defensive cyber and network hacking of some sort. And of course, they're doing a bunch of prizes. I think they're up to $15,000 of prizes right now, and you can check them out on their website if you go to tryhackme.com/Christmas and see all the details for yourself. All right, let's jump into it and look at day 4's event. I think this one is more around brute forcing for a web login using Burp Suite. If you're not familiar with Burp Suite, TryHackMe also has a room around learning the basics of Burp Suite. If you haven't done it already, I highly recommend looking into it and giving it a try. But let's jump into this and see what this room is about. All right, so for this one, we're going to be looking at day 4. This is Santa's running behind. The objective for this is that we're going to understand the authentication and where it's used, understanding what is fuzzing, understanding what Burp Suite is, and how we can use it for fuzzing a login form to gain access. And we're going to apply this knowledge to retrieve Santa's travel itinerary. So if you're not familiar with this, you can follow along with it on your own. For the sake of this video, I'm going to kind of skip some of this stuff to make it easier, but we're going to look at each of these different chapters and kind of skim through them and go to the next step until we start. So the first thing I did was I went to the top corner right here. I started my machine. I'm already using the TryHackMe VPN. So I am connected to their network and I can access this machine. So where is authentication and where is it used? This is where they verify user's identity. They want to make sure they know who you are. And you can actually use authentication in different ways. The most common one in web apps usually is just a set of credentials, like a username and password. It could be a token. This could be sometimes a base 64, a hash of some sort. You will see that a lot of times with APIs. It could be a biometric authentication like a fingerprint, retina data, and so on. I'm going to skip the next portion of this and jump into fuzzing. Fuzzing is an automated means of testing an element of a web application until the application gives a vulnerability or valuable information. So in this case, with fuzzing the login, we're going to throw in a bunch of username and passwords until it gives us access to this web application by brute forcing for the password that they're using. And I will show all that obviously in a little bit. But let's look at fuzzing with Burp Suite. Again, if you're not familiar with Burp Suite, it's one of the best tools you can use, whether you're doing pen testing, bug bounty hunting, hacking web applications or whatever. TryHackMe has a great room for this. I'll link that into the description as well. So obviously the first thing you want to do is you want to set Firefox to point to the proxy. This way Burp Suite is allowed to intercept the traffic you're sending through your browser. And the next thing you want to do is go to Other, click on Burp Suite, open up Burp Suite, go to the Proxy tab, and turn on Intercept. Now, of course, if you're not using a proxy tool like Foxy Proxy, I highly recommend that. It's the best way to control your proxy. You can easily turn it on and off by just clicking on the extension and then going to Use Proxy or Disable Foxy Proxy, which makes your life a lot easier. So in this case, they're showing us that using Burp Suite, they're sending the username cmnattic or cmnattic with a password. Intercepting this on Burp Suite will give us this request that's being sent in the browser. In the background, you can send this to intruder, and using intruder, you can actually replace the value of a password with a word list. So you say, hey, every time you send a request to the login page, send the username cmnattic or cmnattic or whatever it is, and I want you to brute force for this password by using a password from this list below. So here you can see they're loading up the word list and they're going to fuzz it until it works. This was pretty much a walkthrough for what this video is supposed to be about. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually open up this URL right here. And this will show us a version of what they just showed us. So this is going to be exactly what we looked at, but we're going to get on hands-on and figure it out. And I want to make sure I read this properly. So the first thing is it says you have to access a login form. We see that already. So we're going to mark it as complete. Then it says configure Burp Suite in Firefox and send a dummy request. So I already actually have Firefox set up. Actually, I use Chrome. So I already have Google Chrome ready with Foxy Proxy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point it to intercept what we're going to send it. And I'm going to just type in Burp Suite Professional. Again, if you don't have Burp Suite Professional, that is completely fine. You can use the community version. It may be a little bit slower, can be a little bit slower than the professional version, but it will still get the job done. All right, now that we have Burp Suite open, we're going to set intercept on. You can't see my browser address, but what I'm doing is I'm refreshing the page. And as you can see, this is going to hang for a bit. I'm going to open up Burp Suite again. And what we see here is that it's sending a request to this IP address, which is the IP address of the box. And we saw that here as well. It's this IP address right here where this challenge is being hosted. And it's sending a request to the web root, just a slash. And you can see the PHP session and some other information that your browser is sending to this website in order to finish this request. So what we're going to do is we're going to forward this. And I'm going to turn that off. So if you're not familiar with Burp Suite, again, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to the target tab. We're going to go to scope, and we're going to add the IP address for this host. And we're going to tell it that I want to only intercept data sent to this IP address. I'm doing this just to make it easier for myself for the sake of this video. In case my web browser wants to send requests to Google, I don't want that to be shown to be confusing. And you can click here that says only intercept stuff that is in the target scope, which is what we just said right here. Again, if you've done the Burp Suite room with TryHackMe, it explains all this stuff. I highly, highly recommend going through it. So this should make it easier. We're gonna go back in here, and in this challenge, it says we want to look what valid password we can use for Santa. So TryHackMe is actually giving you a list of passwords. If you go click right here and open it, it will give you a list of potential passwords. I recommend using this obviously because it would take a lot less time than using a bigger password list where there's more credentials and it's going to take longer for it to work. So let's go into Burp Suite again, open it up. We're going to put in the username Santa, and I'm going to type in the password Santa. The intercept is on. We're going to say login, and of course we're going to see this request being sent. What we can do is we can go to action, send to repeater, or you can do Command-Shift-R. Or Command R, sorry, and then we're gonna send this to the repeater, and now we can fuzz this thing as many times as we want. Just to make it a little bit better, let me make this window a little bit bigger. So now if we send this request, it's gonna come back and say invalid username and password. We can manually do this one by one by putting password, admin. As you can see, this is gonna take forever if we do it one by one, or we can actually send this to intruder. So we're gonna send this to intruder. And we can have it automated for us to do this for us for every single password that we have. So right now we know the username is Santa. We know this because it's given to us in this challenge. And we want to look for the password parameter. So we're gonna add this right here. So that means I'm gonna give you a list of passwords, and I wanna replace this value every time you send a request, and I want to see the results. So we're gonna go to payloads, copy all of our passwords right here, go back to Burp Suite, and we're going to just paste them in here. So I've copied these and it's pasted in here, and I'm not going to change anything here, and I'm just going to start the attack. Now every time the attack is being sent, there are a few things that we can see. First, obviously, is the payload. The payload is the request we have sent. So we've sent Christmas, we've sent elves, and all these different ones. And we can see how big the length is. So in a lot of cases, if their username and password is wrong, the length is always going to stay the same. But if we sort it by length and the username and password is correct, or something went different than being a wrong password, we're going to notice a change in the length for this request. I'm going to show you what that means. So right here we can see everything that we have sent so far has the length 2573. So every single one, and if we look at the response for each of these, we can see at the top it says invalid password and username. Right here you can see it for every single one, except for the password cookie, which was our 11th password on the list, or the request that we have sent. In this one at the top, it doesn't send us a username and password incorrect error. And also another thing is very different, which is the status code. So this one and all the other ones with the wrong password has a status of 200, but the one we think with the correct password actually has a 302, which means it's redirecting us to somewhere else. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go and close this down. I think right now, based on the list that I've seen, the password should be cookie. And I'm gonna go back here, type in Santa with the password cookie. And as you can see, we have been able to log in and capture the first flag, which is THM Santa delivers. So actually we're going to type in the password here, which is cookie, and we have the correct answer, and we're going to submit the THM Santa delivers for this flag. All right, that's it. That was day 4, where we were able to use Burp Suite to brute force for a set of credentials and get access to this portal. I'll see you tomorrow for day 5, where we're gonna look at XSS and potentially exploit an XSS vulnerability on a forum throughout this Cyber of Advent.